screen, it says,
Okay, you want to leave and join. Okay, so that you can
yeah, it
reshare the
says,
screen.
yeah, it says, please move this window away from the shared application. So,
Okay, okay.
what that is. Okay, I think, yeah, we might be able to ring it with this. It's just a box on the side. So I don't know what you would advise. Should I leave and rejoin?
Okay, if that would work, it's fine. It works at times. It helps clear the glitch. So you may just exit the room and join back.
Okay,
Maybe the
okay,
screen will share properly. Yes.
okay. Thank you.
Mm.
I
All
guess I
right.
might use that opportunity to restart the computer as well, because I don't understand why there's a glitch. Uh, just are you? I'm not even seeing the Zoom interface again. I guess you might have to kick me out. Or I think I'll just restart the computer. I think that's
Okay.
the best
All
way.
right. That's fine. Okay. Okay, everyone. So our facilitator is currently experiencing some glitch, so he'll be right back. He has to restart his PC and rejoin. Hopefully it clears from his end. So let's just exercise a little patience, please. Thank you. We have about 15 right now.
Okay. So do you want to do the introduction and then I make the presentation?
Yes, though the
Okay.
introduction is brief, just what I have here on the flyer. Yes, so good evening, everyone, once again, especially to those who have just joined us. So tonight, this is the HR mentorship webinar series, and we'll be examining the topic measuring and reporting human capital, aligning HR with global standards. That's ISO 30414 and SEC guidelines. So our facilitator for tonight is no other person than Mr. Ademola Odewade. Um, He's the founder and CEO of KDEMS Consulting Limited, London, United Kingdom. He has a BSc, an ACA, and an MBA as well. So over to you, Mr. Ademola.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the honor of being here today to share knowledge. And of course, a very, very big, what I say, apologies for the technical glitches we experienced at the beginning. I always say that technology is the best thing and the worst thing that has happened to humankind. And I do not take your time for granted. Of course, when a person shares their time with you, they share their life with you because the SI unit for measuring life is time. So over to the topic I set before us today. We will be discussing measuring and reporting human capital, and of course, aligning HR with global standards. That is ISO 30414 and the SEC guidelines. I would like for everyone to make this highly, highly participatory. The reason why I am here, today is not to lecture, but to be a moderator, a facilitator, right? And the reason why I am the facilitator today is not because I am smarter than anyone on the call. It's just because I've been privileged to have experience, when it comes to professional life and of course entrepreneurship, and also privileged to have a couple of certifications that my very good friend just mentioned right there. So we all know that human capital is the, the the lifeline, the blood of any organization, right? And of course, our human capital reporting is increasingly vital for organizations worldwide. So providing a data-driven view of people as assets rather than costs is very, very important. So this session would introduce the Nigerian HR professionals to global frameworks for human capital measurement. And that particular framework is the ISO 30414. And of course, we also need to make reference to the US SEC. By the way, the SEC is the Security Exchange Commission, and they have regulations. So the regulation that applies to this is the SK item 101, section C, and demonstrates how these can align with the Nigerian local context. So we'd also cover measuring human capital matters, what global standards entail, and how to adapt them to the Nigerian regulatory environment and Nigerian practice. So by the end of this presentation, the participants will understand the key metrics and of course, realistic approaches to collect and report HR data, even with the current maturity level of the HR analytics in Nigeria, and how to gradually elevate these practices. So if you are following me on this call, on this knowledge sharing session, I would like for you to type HR in the chat box. Let us type HR in the chat box. If you are following me, how many HRs do we have in the chat box, please? My co-moderator, I would like to hear from you to see how many HRs we have in the chat box.
Okay, I'll be taking a count. Okay, I've seen 6 so far.
Okay, interesting stuff. Interesting stuff.
Yeah.
I think yeah, six can be a quorum. I think
Okay, 7. Another one, 8, 9. Okay, so 9 so far.
let's get to double digits, guys. Let's make this participatory. It's not just about me, it's about you.
Fair.
Cool. Yeah, that's good. So I'm not the important person here. You guys are the important people here. So I'd actually delve into the next slide, right? Why measure HR capital? That is rather human capital, right? So we'll be talking about the global trends and of course business case. So as we all know that global investors and regulators now recognize that people are the best assets in any organization. And they must be backed by metrics. I have had the opportunity to be with the global Big Four accounting firms. We know the global Big Four accounting firms are Deloitte, PwC, EY, and KPMG. And I used to be in management when it comes to audit. And there's something we say in audit: if it was not documented, it was not done. If it was not documented, it was not done. And how do you document items in the world of business? In the world of business, we use metrics to document, performance in the world of business. So when it comes to human capital, we need to adopt metrics in order to be able to know how are we performing in terms of the human capital. So high profile moves from sustainability reporting mandates the SEC's new human capital disclosure rule. And speaking of disclosure, when you talk about reporting, reporting entails 4 different key criterias. And what are these 4 key criterias? We have measurement, we have valuation, we have presentation, and of course we have disclosures. So this disclosure rule signals that human capital data influences investor decisions and corporate value. So measuring human capital enables organizations to do these key things you have on the screen. The first item is to demonstrate value to investors. So companies with strong people metrics show clearer links between people practices, risk, and profitability, which can improve access to funding. Transparency on workforce composition, stability, and capabilities builds investor confidence. I've had the privilege to speak with some of the world's I say, successful entrepreneurs and professionals and C-suite executives, right? Uh, they always have a common denominator. They always talk about the people because the people are what help them to achieve their organizational goals. So it's very, very important that we track the human capital performance within any organization. So the next pillar is to drive strategic decisions. So HR data such as turnover rates, the skill gaps, etc., informs strategy. For example, predictive analytics can flag flight risk employees. So management can intervene early. Without data, HR is often flying blind, reacting only after problems occur. And we all know that in terms of organizational skills, it is very important that we are proactive instead of being reactive. So the next pillar talks about the benchmark and improve. So standard metrics allow comparison with peers, with competitors, and of course, using frameworks like ISO 30414 provides a like-for-like basis to track progress and pinpoint areas to improve engagement, productivity, and culture. I don't know if there are any accountants in on the call today. So previously in accounting, we used to have territorial, and of course, accounting is actually highly territorial in nature. Previously, we used to have gaps across different countries. By gaps, we mean generally accepted accounting principles or practices. However, over time, we now have the International Financial Reporting Standards, and the International Financial Reporting Standards actually enabled organizations to have a like for like basis for comparison amongst countries, amongst companies across countries, rather, right? So this is similar in terms of the HR basis. That is, you always want to benchmark. And when you talk about benchmarking, you're talking about having metrics, right, to be able to compare um, performance across organizations. And lastly, we talk about supporting ESG goals. ESG is an acronym for environmental, social, and governance, right? So human capital is a very big part of the ESG performance. And ESG is pretty much talking about sustainability. So globally, there are increasing calls for companies to report on workforce diversity, equitable pay, training, and labor practices as part of the ESG disclosures. So the bottom line is that data-driven human capital reporting turns the soft concept of our people into hard evidence for accountability and improvement. This is especially relevant in Nigeria, where HR decisions have often relied on intuition due to lack of comprehensive data. Embracing measurement helps Nigerian HR leaders move from anecdotal to analytical decision making. I know most of us on the call would have heard this saying, follow the data points, or follow the numbers. And we also must have heard that numbers don't lie, right? The world is ruled by numbers. And if we're able to track, edit anything at all in business in numerical terms, it enables us to make a better informed decision making about that part of the business. So if you have any questions regarding what I have spoken about just now, please type them into the chat box. And of course, in order to do a pulse check as to if you're following, can you type ESG into the chat box? ESG in the chat box. I'll have my co-moderator check in with you. So how many ESGs do we have in the chat box, please?
Okay, 3 and still counting, most likely.
Okay, interesting stuff. So the standard that we have right here, that is the ISO 30414 overview, right? It's an international standard, just like the comparison I made to accounting, which is the International Financial Reporting Standards. So the ISO 30414 is the first international standard providing guidelines for internal and external human capital reporting. So it defines 11 core human capital areas that organizations should monitor and report on. So the first one is compliance and ethics. So we're talking about ethical conduct, code of conduct, adherence, and of course, cases of violations. I don't know the exact mix of the participants we have on the call today, but I would like to believe that everyone on this call must have heard of a code of conduct document. So every organization that knows what they're doing typically will have a handbook, a manual on the code of conduct. And if there are any violations, it's HR that manages that, and that has to be appropriately documented. So this is a very popular one, right? The cost. So what's the total workforce cost? What's the human capital ROI? That is the return on investment, and of course, what's benefits as a percentage of revenue. Up next is diversity. Diversity has actually been a very, very big, you know, uh, controversial topic, especially in the United States recently. We had the president over there, would I say, make the DEI initiatives, right, from the previous government now optional, and a lot of organizations started to change their DEI policies. So diversity, we're talking about gender, age, ethnicity breakdowns, and of course diversity in leadership and the workforce. So some organizations make that conscious effort to ensure that they have a certain minimum percentage of maybe women the on the board of directors. Some of them have a minimum participation of, say, minority ethnic groups on the workforce or in on the board of directors. So all of these metrics are typically tracked. So leadership up next. So leadership competence, stability, the span of control, succession coverage for leaders. I often say this, that there is no success without a successor, right? So organizations that are forward-looking and are progressive always ensure that they track our leadership data, and of course, they ensure that they train, what I say, senior management to enable them to be capable to take over from the current crop of leadership. So organizational culture, for example, employee engagement scores, values alignments, trust indices. Uh, I would while I was at the Big Four, there's something we typically do every year. So there's typically an employee survey that they give you once a year to know to it's like a pulse check basically to check how you feel about the way the organization supports you, how you feel about your role, if how you feel about leadership, and of course, if your values align with, the values of the organization, and if your career projection actually aligns with the current role in which you currently operate, and of course, gauge how happy you are with, what you do and what the organization does. Of course, up next, health, safety, and well-being. So workplace safety incidents, right? I think this applies more to organizations involved in physical uh, activity-related work. For example, the construction industry. It's very important. It is applicable to all organizations, but it is, would I say, um, more important in these kind of organizations. So workplace safety incidents, lost time injury rate, absenteeism, employee wellness indices. These are very, very important for HR function to track. Up next is productivity. So, for example, the revenue, the profit per employee, the output per labor hour, and of course, utilization rates. Utilization basically is talking about how engaged has an employee been, given the capacity of time they're able to work versus the work that they have actually been engaged in. So utilization rates are very, very important. It doesn't make sense when you have a 40-hour contract per week with an employee and you are giving them work for maybe say 25 hours. You might have to find a way to review the contract and ensure or review the work available to them to ensure that your employees are optimally utilized. So recruitment, mobility, and turnover. So time to fill vacancies, 12-month turnover rate and internal promotion rate. So turnover rate basically is looking at the rate at which employees come in and go out of the organization. It is very, very important to track this, right? Sometimes a high turnover rate is due to employee dissatisfaction. And you also need to benchmark with what is obtainable across other competitors within the industry. So in consulting, for example, it's quite, would I say, common to experience high turnover rates because consultants are in high demand and will typically be snapped up by sometimes even your clients, right? So, but every industry has an average. So you want to ensure that you are not below the industry average, right? So skills and capabilities. So the average training hours per employee, certifications, and their competency levels. It's important to ensure that we track the skills. So in order for the human capital to deliver the deliverables that are required by an organization, you need to ensure that your workforce are well equipped with the necessary skills they need to deliver on the job. Up next is succession planning. So the percentage of critical roles with ready successors and the talent pipeline depth. And lastly, we have the workforce availability. That is, what is the head count? What is the full-time versus part-time, that is contract mix, the critical skills of vacancies, and the geographical distribution. So in this age and time, we are now getting to see more hybrid organizations, right? You see organizations that have staff in Nigeria, you have staff in South Africa, you have staff in Kenya. Um, Due to technology, you're able to connect, right? However, there are certain responsibilities that cannot be carried out, would I say, remotely. So organizations need to track, the workers' availability in order to be able to distribute responsibilities as appropriate. So these categories actually come with recommended metrics, and there are 32 to 58 metrics depending on the organization size. So ISO 30414 is voluntary, but provides a comprehensive blueprint. So not every organization will track all of the metrics, especially SME. So SMEs are your small and medium scale enterprises. So there's something with reporting, right? For SMEs, you cannot possibly adopt every reporting metric on the book because sometimes you always have to evaluate the cost versus the benefit, right? So for small organizations, they might not need to adhere to everything because the cost alone of making this reporting outweighs the benefit for them. So as organizations scale up, they need to evaluate the aspects of these international standards that they need to start to adopt going forward. Or for large scale organizations, we're talking about organizations with over 100 or over 1,000 employees, it's necessary that they adhere to these standards. But it's key to note that it is not mandatory, but it is voluntary for now. So not every organization will actually have to track these metrics. And of course, it is highly encouraged that companies report consistently on these areas to support workplace sustainability. And of course, the standards goal is to make transparent the human capital contribution to the organization and to improve decision making. So if you are following me on this call, can I have an ISO 30414 in the chat box? So I think this is a mouthful. Uh, Let me have 30414. Yeah, let's do the numbers alone. 30414. Can I have 30414 on the chat box? My housekeeper, let me know how many we have on here.
Okay, 5 and counting. 6, 7.
Okay, let's get to double digits. I love double digits.
9, 10, 11. Okay, so it's currently on 11.
Oh, interesting. We have
12,
hit double
13.
we've hit double digits. I think that's cool. So by the way, if you have any questions, please, there's no such thing as a foolish question. Or what is foolish is not asking questions when you require an answer. So these, I guess most of us on this call are probably Nigerians or reside in Nigeria. So, but this standard is actually, would I say, originated from the US, and of course it aligns with the US SEC requirement. So I'll do a quick run through of the US SEC Human Capital Disclosure Item 101 Section C. So in August 2020, the US Securities and Exchange Commission adopted a rule requiring public companies to disclose material human capital information in their annual filings. So specifically, the regulation S-K item 101 section C now mandates companies to include a description of their human capital resources including any human capital measures or objectives the company focuses on to the extent it is material to understanding the business. So the key requirements are that companies must disclose the number of employees as a basic indicator and describe their human capital resources and initiatives, if material, in a narrative form. The SEC deliberately did not prescribe specific metrics or a definition of human capital, and it uses a principles-based, materiality-driven approach. So I have mentioned material a couple of times. So I'd like to give us the IFRS definition of materiality. So an item is said to be material if its inclusion or its omission from the financial statement is significant enough to influence the decision making of the users of the financial statement. So it means materiality is quite subjective in nature. So I take for example, we all know Coca-Cola, for example. If Coca-Cola has a fraud case of 10 million naira, say for example, or if 10 million naira is not disclosed in their financial statements, do we think that is material? I don't think that is material because they run into billions, right? So something worth 10 million is not material to Coca-Cola. However, if 10 million is missing on the financial statements of anybody on this call, myself inclusive, I think we are going to get angry. So I hope that is a good explanation of what material means, right? So items are said to be material, either inclusion or their omission, right, is significant enough to influence the decision making of the users of the financial information. So if you hear that 10 million is missing in the financials of Coca-Cola, that is not going to influence whether you want to invest in Coca-Cola or not. If that makes sense. So what are the common disclosure areas? We have workforce size and composition, employee relations and collective bargaining, company culture and ethics programs, compensation and benefit strategies, diversity and inclusion policies, training and development programs, health, safety, and well-being measures. So many US companies essentially cover similar areas to ISO 30414, but in a qualitative narrative, highlighting what they do to attract, develop, and retain talent. So the SEC's requirement is a light touch framework. It forces the conversation about human capital at the board level without listing exact metrics. The companies must have governance and controls around these disclosures. They're part of regulated filings. So on to the next one, which is very important for all of us on the school. So let's talk about the Nigerian regulatory and legal context for human capital reporting. So aligning with global standard requires understanding of local Nigerian regulations, laws, and norms that govern human capital. The Nigeria is gradually strengthening requirements on disclosures and human resource practices. So we'll talk about the Nigerian SEC and corporate governance codes. So the Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance 2018 emphasizes that boards should attract and retain high quality human capital and disclose certain practices. So recent reforms via the Investments and Securities Act 2025 give the Nigerian SEC authority to mandate sustainability reporting, including social and human capital aspects as a legal requirement rather than voluntary. So do we see the difference here? So when you're talking about international standards, we must always ensure that we comply with the local standards. And when it comes to reporting, right, anytime there is a clash between an international standard and a national standard, the national standard is what prevails over the international standard. I hope that makes sense. Anytime you have a clash between an international standard and a national standard, the national standard is what prevails. So the National Pension Commission, PENCOM, employers with greater than 15 employees, that is 15 or more employees, must enroll in the contributory pension scheme, contributing 10% of monthly salary with 8% by the employee. So compliance with PENCOM is effectively a human capital metric. That is the percentage of employees with pension coverage, timeliness, and remittances. So up next is the NSITF, that is the Nigeria Social Insurance Trust Fund. So these mandates that employers contribute 1% of total monthly payroll to the NSITF, which funds compensation for workplace injuries, disabilities, or death. So HR must report workplace injuries and accidents to NSITF within 1 week. Up next, we have the Industrial Training Fund, which is ITF, to spur skills development. So Nigeria requires 1% of annual payroll to be paid to the ITF for training programs. The ITF provides training and refunds some of these costs if companies implement qualified training. And the labor laws of Nigeria. So Nigeria's Labor Act, that is Chapter L1 LFN, that is the laws of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 2004, sets minimum employment standards, that is contracts, working hours, leave redundancies, etc. So while it doesn't mandate public reporting of HR metrics, it affects internal HR metrics. So the key takeaway here is that Nigeria's regulatory environment provides pieces of the human capital puzzle. And of course, compliance with pensions, insurance, training funds, and good governance codes, right? And however, there is not yet a single integrated human capital reporting standard locally. This is where aligning with ISO 30414 and the SEC frameworks can help fill the gap, ensuring that Nigerian organizations are both meeting local obligations and telling a comprehensive people story that meets global standards. And again, I need to iterate this, that anytime there is a clash, right, between the local requirements and the international requirements, the local requirements prevail, because the local requirements, the local regulations are law, but the international regulations are just the guidance. I hope that makes a sense. So if we are following, can we type ITF in the chat box? ITF in the chat box, please. Housekeeper, how many ITFs do we have on the chat box?
We have 6 now, 7, 8. Nine. Okay, so I have 9.
Okay, interesting. So let us align the international standard with Nigerian practices, right? So we can create a bridge, for the global frameworks with the Nigerian reality. So I have a box here, I have a table rather, that shows the alignment of ISO 30414 human capital category, um, as it corresponds with the SEC disclosure themes and of course the Nigerian context. So the first is compliance and ethics. So when you look at the SEC, right, which is the American requirement, so it is often qualitative disclosure of company culture and ethical standards, the code of conduct training and anti-corruption measures. But for the Nigerian context and practice, the labor laws and codes require fair labor practices, and companies to track ethics training and any misconduct cases. So public companies adhere to codes like the NCCG, right, and emphasizing transparency and anti-corruption. So up next is in terms of costs. So we have the US requirement, but I would like to dwell more on the Nigerian requirements. So the statutory costs such as pensions, NSITF, and ITF contributions are tracked internally. Nigerian firms know total payroll costs, benefits costs, etc., but seldom report publicly beyond the financials. So I hope at the end of this knowledge sharing session, we will go back to organizations as better equipped HR professionals and ensure that we improve our reporting. So diversity and inclusion, right? So for local emphasis, Nigeria has no quota for private sector diversity, but gender diversity and inclusion are encouraged. So some Nigerian firms voluntarily report female workforce percentage or leadership diversity. So up next, leadership. The corporate governance code expects boards to ensure that CEO and executive succession planning is reported. So internally, many Nigerian firms lack, they track the leadership readiness, but they don't publish it. And for health, safety, and well-being, in terms of legal compliance, companies must abide by the Employee Compensation Act and of course report any injuries in the workplace and also contribute to the NSITF. So many Nigerian companies already track lost time injury frequency rates, fatality counts, etc. So in summary, the ISO 30414 provides a full spectrum of metrics, so many of which map to areas that the SEC expects companies to discuss. and each has a Nigerian twist. So Nigerian HR professionals should use this as a menu, picking metrics that are globally recognized or tailoring it to the local priorities. Again, I repeat, anytime you have a clash between the international guidance and the national guidance is law, and that is what is that is what should prevail actually. So if you're following, can we type HR in the chat box? By the way, at the end of this presentation, you can have the slides for the presentation. If you sign up to my newsletter, I think I'll drop that in the chat box, the link to the newsletter, so you can have the slides delivered directly to your mailbox. So, speaking of HR analytics, maturity in Nigeria and the current state of affairs. So in Nigeria, many organizations are still in a foundational stage of HR analytics. So data is often scattered across payroll systems, Excel sheets, and paper files. There's so many organizations in Nigeria that use paper. Let's not go into that right now. So according to a 2025 HR survey, the lack of comprehensive HR data has historically made decision-making difficult. It's not uncommon for HR departments to manually calculate metrics like headcount or turnover on an ad hoc basis. So the first metric we talk about here is the crawl. That is the basic metrics. So start with simple, readily available data. For example, your head counts per department, the gender mix, the joiners and leavers per quarter, training hours logged in, etc. So we must ensure the accuracy and consistency in these basics. So many Nigerian firms are able to pull this from their existing HR or payroll systems and work. That is, you can see it's a transition. We talk about the basic, right? The intermediate and the advanced. So the basic is a crawl, the work is the intermediate metrics. So we talk about integrated metrics and analysis. So once the basics are stable, you're able to integrate them into ratios and trends. So for example, annual turnover rates, absenteeism rates. So that is using the attendance records. So cost per hire, internal fill rates for vacancies, and of course you use tools like Excel or HRIS dashboards to track these over time. And RUN, which is the advanced analytics or predictive analytics. So a few organizations might progress to predictive analytics, for example, using statistical tools to predict who might resign, as illustrated by Wema Bank, using a flight risk model, combining engagement performance and remuneration data. So this requires more data maturity and possibly hiring data analysts. So the implication is we recommend a crawl, walk, run approach. So we can take this back to our organizations, right? Ensure that we break these metrics into the basic, the intermediate, and the advanced. That is crawl, walk, and run. So I strongly recommend that crawl, walk, run approach. So advanced analytics like predictive modeling are new but emerging. So forward-thinking companies, especially banks and large corporates, have begun exploring them, but this is not yet widespread. So if we are following, can I have CWR in the chat box? So CWR stands for crawl, walk, and run. A housekeeper, how many CWRs do we have on the chat box?
7 right now. A 9.
Interesting. That's great. I
10, 11, 12.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you guys for following me. is it that I made this to now I feel like I oversimplified this. Probably that's why you're not having questions, right? But I'll take it that I did a good job to make this, highly simplified. But I'd appreciate any questions in the chat box. So let's talk about the practical metrics for Nigerian HR teams. So considering typical Nigerian organizational context, so there are I have actually prepared practical metrics under each category, along with simple methods or tools to gather them. So the most basic and the most important is the head count and composition. So what metric are we counting here? That's the total head count. Those break down by gender, location, employment type, that is full-time or contract. So what tool can we use? The payroll records or the staff list. This is often done in Excel and it can be tallied. So many organizations already report headcounts in annual reports qualitatively, and of course we suggest quantifying breakdowns. It's very important that we have breakdowns. These are very important for um, data driven decision making. So up next is the turnover rate. So what's the metric? That is the percentage of employees who left in a year. So what's the method? You track the resignations or dismissals monthly. So HR typically should have exit info and calculate yearly total exits divided by the average head count. So HR typically should have I see the record of the leaders logged in an Excel sheet. Up next is training hours per employee. So what's the average training hours or expenditure per employee per year? So what's the method? You can use the training attendance records or budgets. So since companies contribute to ITF, so they should be running up funding training. So you can convert that into a metric and NSITF and pension compliance. So what's the compliance rate? So you should actually be compliant 100%, right? So e.g. the 100% of required contributions made on time or any metrics or incidents. So what method? Use the finance or HR records. And of course, report achieved 100% compliance within monthly pension and NSITF contributions. Reported two places. For example, you can report, hopefully most people don't want to report this, right? Hopefully we don't have workplace injuries in 2025. But of course, if you do, all of them have to be duly reported and compensated. And the last but not the least is employee engagement index. So what is the metric? The score from surveys, e.g. percentage of positive responses. I think I remember earlier in this presentation, I talked about how the big four accounting firms always, provide surveys to employees to, track their pulse. So what's the method? You can conduct a simple survey, with statements like I'm satisfied with my job, rate on a scale of 1 to 5, and compute the average or percentage of agreeing. So even if starting with a basic survey, it always provides a baseline. And you can use tools like SurveyMonkey, for example. I want to believe that some of us on this call would have heard of tools like SurveyMonkey. So each of these metrics ties back to ISO areas and can be explained in SEC style narrative. So for instance, you might report our turnover rate was 10% in 2025 versus 15% industry estimate. So reflecting improved retention after new engagement initiatives. And we had 250 employees, 40% female, operations in 3 states, and invested in capacity building with 5 training days per employee on average. So that is an example of a narrative for these kind of metric. And typically, these narratives are usually on the annual reports of the organization. So if you are still following, please type in data into the chat box. So speaking of data, data collection and metric governance, right? So what are the data collection sources? So housekeeper, how many data do we have on the chat box, please.
I see 5 now. 6.
Interesting stuff.
7. 8. Okay, so 8 so far.
Okay, I think that's a good one. I love eight. So data collection sources, right? So HR information systems, which is also known as HRIS, right? So if a company uses any HR software, even basic payroll software, so check its reporting features. Many can produce reports on headcounts, turnover, leave, etc. So it's always essential to have HR professionals that are digitally literate. So most of the softwares that we use have what I say interfaces wherein you can export data from. So we need to make the most of the digital tools that we use, right? In previous presentation I had last week, I mentioned, and which was on what's the topic again? Business acumen for HR professionals. I talked about when you're hiring in any organization, it's important to evaluate three things. That is the mindset, skill set, and the tool set. So in terms of the tool sets, right, we need to always ensure that we have a mastery of the tool set that we use and uh, optimize the capacity, the function. It's interesting that a lot of professionals do not utilize the tool set that they have uh, to a reasonable extent. So these softwares that we use typically have functions for us to export different forms of data instead of us spending or wasting time with manual processes. So manual data gathering. So for compliance metrics, such as pension, NSITF, and ITF. So create a simple tracking sheet, track monthly NSITF payments, yes, no, or amount, and of course, track number of employees with complete pension documentation. So employee surveys, very important. So introduce basic surveys to measure culture and engagement. A yearly engagement survey or quarterly polls can yield data for organization culture metrics and analytics and visualization. Use common tools such as Excel, Power BI to analyze and visualize metrics. So you can use Excel pivot tables to analyze turnover by department or tenure. So speaking of metrics, metric governance and best practices. So you can develop a simple HR metrics dictionary. So define each metric, such as your numerator slash denominator scope, define turnover rate, perhaps number of exits in a period divided by the average head count. So it is very, very, very important for us to have this metric dictionary in order to be able to guide the users of the reports that we turn out. Not everybody is, would I say, business language literate. So such that any form of information you're producing in your reports, people are able to have that guidance to go. Typically, it's usually at the end of the report or maybe somewhere at the beginning of the report to look into the glossary of terms. There are different things they call it. Sometimes call it glossary of terms, definitions, whatever it is, but just ensure that whatever metrics that you are providing, you clearly define those metrics. So assign responsibility for data updates. So perhaps the HR operations or analytics officer compiles the metrics quarterly and of course review your data quality. So common Nigerian HR issues include missing records. How many of us remember I think there was a time in Nigeria where they said some money was missing in some government office, and I was so that a snake swallowed it. So we don't want to have situations in which you have missing records. And I think there was also another um, situation in which they said the manual records were actually missing, right? So we want to have uh, backups for every records, right? So digital backups to every manual data in order to ensure business continuity. So uh, we also need to have periodic data audits to fix, variances or any form of anomalies. So security and privacy, we need to ensure that personal data is protected, compliant with the NPPC data protection guidelines. When reporting metrics, aggregate levels are fine. So personal information. Lastly, ingrain metrics into HR governance. So you need to discuss the metrics in monthly management meetings, and this builds a data-driven culture, right? So the Nigerian reality, turnover varies by sector. Recently, the Jackpot syndrome, right? That is the brain drain emigration, right? Drives high turnover of skilled workers. The HR in Nigeria tracks turnover, especially of critical talent. So local surveys indicates an average of 47% of employees might leave in 6 months. So companies should monitor the turnover percentage and attrition causes. So conclusion and next steps. So if you have been enjoying this presentation, can I have hmm, next in the chat box? Yes, let's have next. NEXT. Housekeeper, how many NEXTs do we have in the chat box?
Okay, I think I lost track, but maybe about 8 now. I'll just go to the beginning and check again.
Okay, interesting stuff.
Yeah, 8, I think.
Okay. Um, we're currently on the last slide. Let me try to see if I'm able to drop the link to the newsletter on here so that once you sign up, you would get the, what I say, the PDF, right, for this presentation. So I think I did drop it in the chat box. Kindly confirm if you saw a link in the chat box.
Yes, we can see the link.
Okay,
It's in the
thank you
chat
very much.
box. Yeah.
Okay, so conclusion and next steps. So in conclusion, aligning HR measurements with ISO 30414 and SEC guidelines offers Nigerian HR professionals a powerful way to elevate their impact. So it marries global standards of transparency with our local regulatory responsibilities and realities. So by starting with achievable metrics and gradually building analytic capability, HR can provide insights that influence strategy and satisfy stakeholders. So one, think global, act local. I love this because this is a title to an episode of my podcast that I host. So it's very important to think global but act local. So use ISO's comprehensive framework and SEC's investor-oriented focus as guides, but tailor them to the Nigerian context. Remember, I've been drumming this thing over and over again during the course of this presentation, right? If you are not going to take anything, away from this presentation, always remember that anytime you have a clash between an international guidance and a local guidance, which one prevails? The local guidance is what prevails. So I'd say is to tailor them to the Nigerian context. So include compliance on pensions, training, etc., and address issues like the brain drain jackpot in your narratives. So leverage existing structures, Nigeria's laws, that is the PENCOM, NSITF, ITF, labor laws, already push companies to gather human capital data, to use that data not just for compliance, but for storytelling. So, for example, we invest X million naira in training ITF and maintain safe workspaces, and it's in bracket NSITF. So number three is you need to start measuring now. So don't wait for the regulators to force your hand. Begin with simple HR metrics tracking today. Even basic stats like headcount, turnover, and training hours can yield actionable insights and form the basis of improvement. Number four, build management buy-in. So share these metrics with executives. When boards and CEOs see quantifiable HR data, especially linked to outcomes like productivity or risk reduction, HR credibility grows. And number five, continuous improvement. Human capital reporting is a journey. Each year, refine your metrics, perhaps add one new metric from the ISO list and set targets. Celebrate your improvements and, of course, investigate areas with stagnant or negative trends. So by aligning with the international standards and being mindful of local expectations, Nigerian HR professionals can ensure that human capital reporting is not just a checkbox exercise, but a strategic tool. So these alignment ultimately helps organizations attract investment, enhance reputation, and most importantly, better manage and value their people, turning the often heard phrase, people are our greatest asset, into a demonstrable reality backed by metrics and action. So with these few words of mine, I hope I've been able to convince you and not to confuse you that it is very, very important that we track HR metrics using the international guideline in line with the uh, international standard organization, and of course, ensuring that at every point in time, if there is a clash between the international standard and the national guidance, the national guidance is law and the national guidance reveals. So thank you very much, everyone, for coming to this knowledge sharing session. Um, if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat box. And I think I have dropped the link to the newsletter in the chat box. So once you sign up to the newsletter, I would ensure that you get the PDF for this presentation delivered to your inbox. So thank you and God bless everyone who is joining today. My housekeeper, over to you.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Odewade. I hope I've been pronouncing the surname correctly.
Uh,
Sincere apologies if I haven't.
According to the song by Justin Timberlake, it's too late to apologize.
Oh my, apologies once again. Pardon me. Okay, so I'm going through the chat box, but no question whatsoever. Anyways, I've not seen any questions, so I guess
Uh,
everyone is in alignment though.
I think next time I'll try to make the presentation more complex so that people will.
And then we can bombard you with our queries.
It is my fault for making it too simple.
Not your fault, really. You just made it quite understandable for everyone. You know.
Thank you very much. Thank you very
Yes.
much.
Thank you. We appreciate you a lot.
Love and
Okay.
respect to you guys.
People, I'm looking out for raised hands. Perhaps someone wants to speak, and or someone would prefer to speak instead of typing in the chat box. I'm also looking out for raised hands, and I see none as well. So, are we free to assume that we're fine? We don't have any questions. We don't need any clarifications, nothing, or even a contribution. It doesn't have to be a question. You could have a contribution. There could be something you want to add. It's a knowledge sharing session, remember? So you might want to tell us something, maybe something that you feel we could have that could have been in the presentation but isn't there, and you feel is an important metric meant to be measured. If you'd like to make any contribution, please raise a hand or type in the chat box. I'm looking out for both. Thank you in advance. Maybe that would encourage someone. Okay, so I'll just wait for 1 minute. If I don't see anyone, then we call it a wrap. Okay, finally, we have a hand up. We have Remilekun Babawale. Okay, let me look for you so I can unmute and we have your contribution or question as it may be. Okay, Remilekun, you may unmute.
Okay, good evening. Thanks to the
Hi, Remilekun, we can no longer hear you. We can no longer hear you. Are you still with us? Oh, I think we lost her. Okay, you're trailing off. We didn't hear anything you said. We only heard hello, good evening. Okay, Remilekun, are you there? Okay, we are unable to hear you though, if you can hear me. Oh, we lost her. I think she dropped off the call. Okay, let's hope she's able to join back before we
I think she just
close.
dropped something on the
Oh, okay,
chat
she's
box saying
back.
I can't
Yeah,
unmute.
she said she can't unmute. Okay, but you were speaking before though. Try to unmute again. I've asked you to unmute. Okay, you
Okay,
can
since you,
speak, Remilekun, you're muted. Okay. Hi, Remileko. I think your network is signal is very poor. We can't hear a thing at all. We can't hear a thing.
so I
You're
guess
mute
she can type
actually.
into the chat box if
Yes, please
she's
use the chat
unable to.
box. Thank you. Okay, if there's any other person that wants to make a contribution or you want to ask a question, please indicate by a raise of hand or you use the chat box as well, whichever one is convenient for you. Okay, so we're waiting to see Remilekun's message. Yes, Hajara. This is HR mentorship, and all our webinar sessions are available on the YouTube channel. I'll be typing the name of the YouTube channel. We have over 500, over 750 recordings at the moment on that YouTube channel. So you'll find all our webinar sessions on that YouTube channel. You can always go back. That's the name of the YouTube channel. It's Oluyemi Adeosun. So you can always go back to listen to any of the webinar recordings at your convenient time. I hope that clarifies. Yeah.
My housekeeper, I can see TKI on your
Yes.
name. Does that actually mean thank you in advance? Because I heard you say thank you in advance.
Oh my, I never really thought about that. It's my name actually. It's just my initials. Okay, Remileko has dropped something. She said, just a minute. Okay, Hajara, I'll attend to you. Just scroll up a little. Hajara, I dropped the name of the YouTube channel for you. It's Oluyemi Adeosun. So you can always go back there and you find our webinar recordings there. They're always available, you know. Okay, Remileko says, apologies, my reception is poor. But my question is that, is ISO, sorry, I'm trying to view her message at a glance. Okay, my question is that, is ISO 30414 a certification that can be gotten, and what, or I guess she means to say, and of what essence is it?
Okay. So it is a guidance, right? It is a regulatory guidance, not necessarily certification. However, there are organizations that organize trainings, right, relating to this guidance, such that you can obtain a certification of competence regarding the guideline. I hope that makes sense. So it is a regulatory guidance, just like in accounting, we have the IFRS, International Financial Reporting Standards, right? There are organizations that teach you on the requirements of that standard and issue a certification, right? But first and foremost, it is a guidance. And speaking of what essence is it, the essence is everything we've actually discussed on the call today, right? That is tracking human capital metrics. So just to sum it up, the essence is basically to track the relevant and resourceful human capital metrics in organizations. I hope that does justice to your question.
Remileko, I hope you're still on the call. Let me even confirm. And your question has been adequately attended to. Okay, she's still on the call. Okay. Odewale Adesua, Odewade Adesua says, sorry, I could not get most of the, just a minute. Yeah, I'm trying to see what you dropped in the chat box, Adesua. It is, I can see another question. Just a minute. I'm actually trying to, okay. Okay, so Adesua says, sorry, I could not get most of the discussions. I have a really poor network connection. Please, any information on ISO 2071 lead, that's ISO 20071 lead implementer. Well, yeah,
You
okay,
need
you
to
want
come
to
for
attend to
another.
that?
You need to come for another webinar for
Another session, yes.
that.
Yes. I was even going to refer her. This is something you can find online. There are firms that that facilitate these sessions. Actually, there are firms that are they facilitate accreditations for these kind of certifications. So it's very easy to find, very easy.
Yeah, that's actually the international standard for information security management systems. That's IFMS. Yes.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, that's not the topic of discussion today, but
Yes.
apparently it is pertinent, it is relevant, it's resourceful, right? And of course, yeah, one kind, like you rightly said, I think you touched on already. There are organizations that actually, would I say, organize trainings and offer certifications in each of these
Yeah.
ISOs, just like I told Remileko earlier.
Mhm. Okay, so this way I hope we did justice to that. So there's another comment here. Okay, so Chukwuemeka says, I belong to the sustainability development space. Okay, that's my world too. So, how interwoven is ISO 14001 with the standard? Because I could see some elements of ISO 14001 in this standard. Uh, is that all that you wrote? In these standard elements? Did I get you correctly, Chukwuemeka? You said how interwoven.
Yeah, it's quite interwoven, right? Because ISO 14001, right? It
Mhm.
speaks about environmental management systems.
Mental management, yes.
Yeah, so environmental management systems is pretty much ESG, right? And of
Mhm.
course, ESG reporting links back to what we've spoken about in ISO 30414, right? I
Yes, yes.
remember ESG is environmental, social, and
Social and
governance.
governance, yeah,
And of course, governance, ties to human capital. Even the social reporting ties to human capital. So
absolutely.
they are interwoven. And
Interwoven, yeah,
if you did sects in mathematics, there are something called subsects, right? You see where the circles intersect, right? So there are intersections, basically.
okay, Chukwuemeka, I hope that clarifies your inquiry. Okay, okay, great. He says yes, thank you. So
You're
we're in the
welcome.
same category, yeah. We work in the same environment. I also belong to the environmental space currently. So I'm HR in that space. So that's fine. Good to see a colleague. I'll look for you on LinkedIn, Erundu Chukwuemeka. So you'd see my request to connect. Okay, so I'm looking out for other hands. I don't see any hand raised, and we don't have any more comments or question as well in the chat box.
Interesting.
Okay.
So I'll be looking forward to your would I say LinkedIn
Yes, sure,
connection
certainly.
request. Everybody on the call.
Certainly. Okay. I'm sure everybody can hear. Yes. Okay, so Stella has come again with another one. She has come back with another. Oh no, it wasn't Stella that asked before. Okay, so Stella says, so can a Nigerian organization go for this certification just like ISO 14001 and 45,001? Yes. Yes, Stella. Let me answer before
Absolutely,
Ademola. Yes.
absolutely.
ISO is global. Yes.
But
Yes,
remember,
Nigerian
remember,
organizations
remember what
can.
I always said on the call. That is, anytime you have conflicts, right, between
Yes.
the international standards and the local regulations, the
It's
local regulations,
precedence.
yeah, it takes
Uh-huh.
precedence.
Yeah. Okay, Stella, I hope that clarifies. Okay, I can see your response. Um, Mr. Ijaya. Okay, he says please connect with me. I guess you're referring to Mr. Demola, right? Oh, sorry,
Absolutely.
Miss Ijaya.
I'm easy. I'm easy to find. So
On
uh,
LinkedIn.
yeah, I
It's
think I'm
okay.
easy to find. Search my name or uh, like I said, sign up to the newsletter. I think the link is on the chat box. I'll drop the link again so that you all are able to connect, and I will send the PDF for this session the to your emails, right? So
Okay.
I'm dropping the link again.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, our facilitator. You've been really kind and wonderful. We appreciate you. So, on behalf of Dr. Oliemi Adeosun and the HR mentorship community at large, and to every other person that has joined us from different groups that are on this call, we say thank you. We appreciate your time and your um, magnificence in sharing. We are grateful and we look forward to having you again some other time, maybe elaborating more on ISO or other global certifications that are interwoven, with the HR practice. So we're grateful. Thank you.
Thank you
So
very much.
yes, sir. All right, everyone. You know our tradition already.